Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces here. Hello, Luke. Hello, everybody. Thank you for sharing your location, where you are joining us from. I am here from um, Texas, and it's still super hot. So I hope it's getting you're getting a much colder temperature now, weather. But here in Texas, unfortunately, it's nowhere close to fall or autumn. But today we're going to be doing some brush lettering and another class that is packed with a lot of inspiration for your next project, especially for your fall projects. But honestly, brush lettering is something that you can use for almost everything, for your crafting, for your school, office, work, something that you can actually potentially, one day your hobby turn into a small business, and like what Carrie said, here at Michael's, we're going to start carrying maker place of where you can sell the things that you create. It's kind of like, and another probably well-known um, site that you go to, but now that you can do that in Michael's too. So all these classes that you were invested in, definitely you can add this to your list of something that you can work on, improve on, and keep doing, and one day maybe turn into a career, right? So, good afternoon. My name is Leibella Ralston, and on behalf of Faber-Castell USA, would like to welcome everybody and thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm super excited. I have all my supplies here with me. Let's go through that real quick. We are going to be working with the Albrecht Durer watercolor markers. Now, the Albrecht Durer watercolor markers. If you were here last week, we kind of talked about all the different brush pens that Faber-Castell has. And the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer markers are watercolor markers. These are watercolor pigments in a marker form. Absolutely love. This is artist quality. It is light fast, which means that your projects, your artwork, your work of art will not fade over time. So that's really, really a good thing. Because we are working with watercolor markers, we're going to need a mark, a paper, a pad that is, of course, can take some moisture or some water. So I'm using the watercolor pad artist level number 2. This is from Michael's, the Artist Loft. It is really, really good. This is also acid free and it's also cold press. So in watercolor papers, there's actually two things. You can see cold press and then hot press. So the hot press is the one that has a bit more smoother surface, and cold press is the one that has rigid, you have some hills and valleys on the papers, very textured. And personally, it is my favorite when it comes to watercolor papers. All right. And so also, if you were able to print out your worksheet, it looks like this. But if you don't have it, it's okay because we're going to start from scratch. We're going to actually start doing our lettering in a clean watercolor paper here. But I just shared with you some example, kind of like a review of the important brush strokes, and we'll go through that also a little bit quickly because we're very limited in time. But if you have a graphite transfer sheet, you can do that, trace it into the watercolor paper pad that you have. There's also some samples of some pretty fall and autumn leaves that you can use, and we're going to color. We're going to use this as embellishment in our lettering today. All right. So, and if you're going to start from scratch, like myself, you're going to need some pencil and also some eraser. But I have been doing this for a while, so I probably just go jump in with my marker, okay? And then I have some water here, and then I also have two different brush types in here. This is just a round number 2 watercolor brush. This is from Princeton. I love very thin round brushes like this, especially when I'm doing some, very, very small lettering. Even if big ones, I would prefer a much smaller round brush still because I feel like it's more intricate. I feel like it's more delicate. I can go really slow. It's not going to hold a whole lot of water in there. because what happens is that sometimes when you're using a bigger brush, the bigger your brush is, the more water it's going to hold. So if you don't have a whole lot of control yet, especially if you're doing this, if you're a beginner, what might happen is that you'll end up with some puddle, and more water is much harder to control. And so that's why I always like to use just smaller brush. But what it is that if you need more water, then you're going to have to dip a whole lot more. Does that make sense? So there's some cons and pros to both. I feel like if you have been doing this for a while and you don't mind, you don't mind controlling a whole lot of water, then maybe a number 4 brush is also recommended. But I also have here a water brush pen from Faber-Castell, which is, the water is like automatically flowing from the brush. So it's dripping like this. But one good thing about this is that if you get a really good quality water brush, that water is also controlled. So what happens is that you don't have to keep dipping in the well or your bowl of water to just get some water. So there's always going to be a controlled water flow from this water brush, which is always very helpful. So I like to keep that. And I also like to use just a regular round brush like this. All right. Patricia said that she loves using smaller brushes also. Okay, so I just want to let you guys know that I am able to look at the chat and see if you have any questions. But hello everyone. Hi Lana. Hello Luke. All right. Okay. So, woo, this is going to be fun. So simple quote today. Hello Autumn, because I have figured that when we're doing a whole lot of them, like a big words or a long quote, it really does take a whole lot of our time, right? It does. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go, I apologize about that. I'm going to go get another watercolor pad in here so we can kind of quickly go through our basic simple strokes that we need for the brush lettering. Of course, we have the thin and the thick stroke. The thin stroke is your upstroke, which is every time you would write away from your body, this is where you're going to apply a very light pressure to create your thin stroke. Okay. So I'm going to use the brush pen in here. I'm going to go switch it over here too so you can see it. So let's just quickly go through our simple strokes in here using the tip of your brush. Concentrating on the tip of your brush, you're going to go right away from you. So upstroke, and this is where you're going to apply a very, very light pressure. All right, let's try that. All right. So every time I am going to do any type of lettering, believe it or not, I do have a notebook where I just kind of practice my basic drills of my basic strokes, because it's not magic. It's not like I go right and then it's just automatically just beautiful and flawless. No, it doesn't. So I also do the basic drills. It's just kind of like getting my brain and my hand coordinated. So they're kind of like on the same boat. And they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I really highly suggest that you do your basic drills and don't skip that because it's very important. All right. So this is your upstroke using the tip of your brush, writing away from you, applying very light pressure. This is our thin stroke. That. So I like to kind of like write in different direction to practice my thin stroke from left to right, right to left, as long as you're not doing from top to bottom, because that is where we're going to do the downstroke or our thick stroke. So when you practice down to bottom, up to down, this is where you're writing towards your body. So this is our downstroke or our thick stroke. And this is when we're going to apply heavier pressure. So notice how I'm going to hold my brush also. Now, not just the tip of the brush, we're going to use the tip and also the body of our brush pen. So I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure to create a much thicker stroke like that. Like that. So your downstroke or your thick stroke is every time you would write towards your body. Okay. So doesn't matter if you're drawing diagonal, as long as your motion is from top to bottom. This is for your downstroke, and this is when you're going to apply heavier pressure. And you hold your brush pen also a little bit more like 45-degree angled, like this. So that's our thick stroke. The next stroke is the overstroke. No, let's do the overturn first. Overturn stroke. So this is a combination of our thin and thick, right? So overturn, it's kind of like a frown like this. So we're going to thin first, going up, because you would write towards, we're writing away from us, and now we're writing towards us. So we're going to apply a bit of pressure there. All right, so let's do that again. Using the tip of your pen, then slightly adjusting your angle, and then apply a bit of pressure, then you get that thick stroke. Okay, so this is called our overturn. So you want to practice it a little, you want it to be slanted, you want it to be upright, kind of like this. As long as you practice your light to heavy, right? This is that light to heavy transition. So when we're practicing our overturn, we're practicing our light to heavy. Now to do the opposite, we're going to do the underturn, which is from heavy to light. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this is the one that I struggle with the most, because I feel like from light to heavy feels more natural than actually doing the opposite, which is I'm doing heavy and then I'm trying to go light. Okay, it's a bit of a struggle for me, but with practice, there is nothing impossible. So let's start and practice that one. Okay, so we're going to write towards our body. And so we're going to apply a bit of pressure, and our pen is angled. And then we're going to kind of like switch it and then use the tip of the brush like that. But see, that part right there is actually cheating. So if we really want to get better at doing the transition, we want to do it the right way. We really want to practice that transition from the heavy to light, or the opposite from light to heavy. So let's start out again without lifting our pen in the middle of a stroke. We're supposed to do the whole letter U or the whole understroke in one swoop. Okay, so let's try that. Heavy without lifting the pen. We're just, oh, I did it. I told you I struggle. I'm not kidding, right? So we're going to do it again. We got this. Heavy to light. I am just struggling today. And that is why I wanted to do this drill, because I wanted to practice with you. That one is much, much better. So I want to try that again. Like that. Now look at my stroke in here. They're just a bit unbalanced. Okay, I'm going to try again. Whew. Understroke. Why? And I'm going to show you the underturn. Okay, I always miss a turn. Underturn. So I'm going to do the overturn, which is this, and which is what I said feels more natural to me. We're going to do that overturn, light to heavy. Why? Why do I do this so easily? And now we're going to do the underturn. I stopped again. All right, I can do this. Come on, hand, don't fail me now. So every time I would do the underturn, I feel like my transition between my heavy to the light is not as good as when I'm doing the overturn stroke from the light to the heavy. I am curious which one feels more natural to you, the smile or the frown? Gosh, definitely the frown for me, which is, I don't really understand why. All right, but see how important that was? Because just those two basic strokes right there, the underturn and the overturn, it really is going to give you a very good practice from your switching from the thin to the thick, or from the light to the heavy pressure, right? Okay, the second one is that going to do the compound curve. So the compound curve is really a switch between the overturn and the underturn. Actually, you're going to start with the underturn, a little bit of underturn, and then overturn, and then underturn again. So let's try and do that. Okay, let me switch to the, so we can see this here. Let me move my pens. I apologize. Just move it. All right, here we go. I'm going to try to do the compound curve. Again, a little bit of an underturn here. So I'm going to show you small. So it's kind of like a wave. See, I stopped in there already. I cheated already. Dang it. What is going on with me today? Oh, I'm becoming such a cheater. I hope my kids are not watching. Let's do that again. Let's compound curve. Come on, compound curve. Whoo, my students are going to leave. What are we doing? Let's try that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's kind of like a wave. I kind of like that. It's kind of like a tattoo. All right, I'm going to do it. Small, light, heavy, light, heavy, light. Oh my gosh, I did it, guys. Oh, and we're just in the strokes. Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to do it again. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light. All right, a bit of advice. Maybe try not to do it too big. I think that's what's happening, is that my letters or my strokes are too big. So I'm having a hard time switching and not moving my hands, because we're going to have to eventually move if we're doing a wide stroke, right? So I think that's what's happening. Or at least I think so. All right, let's try that again. Okay. Heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. That's like perfection. Okay, did you guys do it? Again, if you're not getting it right now, it's okay. Because have you seen me struggle there? So you're good. You're good. We're just going to keep practicing one more time, and then we're going to get to our letters. Okay. So it's just, this is a really good practice drill. So this one, heavy, light, heavy, light. So again, the most important to remember there is, when is the time you're going to apply your light pressure? Every time you'd go up, that's your upstroke. So every time you would write away from you, think light as a feather. Then every time you would write towards your body, this is when you're going to apply a much heavier pressure, right? So that's two things to remember. Going up, light; going down, heavy. Okay. All right. So again, practice your drills. Don't skip your drills. Okay. So here we go. We're going to write Hello Autumn. We're going to do a little bit, okay, maybe quite a few of them blending in here, but it looks beautiful when it's blended and you have different colors in there. So of course I picked some pretty fall colors. If you don't have the colors that I have right today, that I'm using today, it's okay. You know, whatever color you have in there is going to work. If you don't want to do a whole lot of blending and just want to learn, you know, the plain brush lettering and just how to write the Hello Autumn, maybe you want to put it as a title in your journal, in your bullet journal or your scrapbook pages, or you want to create your own card, I think that would be perfect. All right. So if you have, again, if you have a graphite transfer sheet, you can transfer that onto the watercolor paper. If you don't, then you want to go sketch with me or do this slowly with me. What you can do is write the word autumn first, okay? Because that is really all there is. I don't have my pencil in here, which is really crazy because I always have everything in here. So I'm going to have to do this and write the word Hello Autumn. All right, another tip that I'd like to share with you today. If you're going to do a whole lot of blending with your Albrecht Durer or your watercolor markers, This is one of my cheat code when I know that I'm going to do a whole lot of blending, to try to have the word in there and not worry about the heavy and the light and the heavy and the lights. I just want to get that over and done with. I use a Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens. Now, you might not have this one because this is brand new. This is their dual marker. Now, if you have the big brush, Albrecht Durer, that works as well, because especially if we're going to write a larger word or quote or an image, you want to use a much larger brush because you can, create, of course, much thicker stroke easier. But if you have just the the Pit Artist in the small, that works as well. Okay, so you might just have to widen a bit of a stroke in there, make it thicker. But what it does is that because the Pit Artist pens it is water-based India ink, it is waterproof once it's dry. So what happens is that you have your underpainting there or your base, right? So you have the word in there. Now you can go back in and start adding your colors. It's kind of like you're painting and adding your blended colors in there. So because your first layer of your Pit Artist pen is waterproof, it's not going to move. It's going to be there. It's not going to move and going to blend with, the other colors that you're going to use. But the trick there is to use a color that is not going to it's not going to intrude or not going to go against the color scheme that you're going to pick. And that is why I have the light yellow glaze in here. Another color that I really love to use is the light indigo. The light indigo is very, very light blue. It's almost, you don't really see it. So it doesn't matter what kind of color palette you have. I think the light indigo is a really nice base to use for that as well, because again, it's very, very light blue. But I think the light yellow glaze will work for a project today. So we're going to focus on the middle. Again, I'm going to go use another paper in here so you just can see how I'm going to write the autumn. And I'm going to use a darker brush. All right, so for the sample, I think I did a capital A like this. Light going up and then down, right? Heavy again. So we can write our letter A like this, or I personally love doing just this simple letter A right there. So this is like doing an oval stroke, like a letter O, right? Just the letter O. And then we're going to add another stroke of downstroke, just like that. A little bit going up. All right, so I'm going to write the word autumn so you can see. All right. I'm going to repeat it again in my main. So you go heavy and then light. And then we're going to do an underturn for the letter U. Heavy, light. And then we're going to start adding a downstroke and then light for my connecting. That's our connecting stroke for the next letter. You always want to set it up and prep the end of each letter. Remember, we're connecting letters now. Okay, so again, the letter U, heavy to light, heavy to light. Make sure, pay attention to the distance of each of your letters. Now, when we're doing a balanced lettering, it's not really super important because if you want to go against the rule, and that's what balanced lettering is really. See, I have different heights of my letters as well, but I think as long as it's legible, okay, so you want to make sure that your letter U looks like a letter U and not just any swoosh and swish of type of strokes in there. So as long as you can recognize the letter as it is, then you're okay. All right. So now letter M, I'm going to start with, if you want to go over here, continue from where your stroke ended and kind of like start downstroke. This is your first letter of the M. Now we're doing 2 overturn stroke here. Watch this. Light to heavy, right? Light to heavy. And we're just going to add like this, almost a compound 2. So if you want to see that as a compound curve, kind of like a compound curve, light to heavy, light. That. Now it's the same, light. I'm just going to continue from where that stroke ended. The base for my N, heavy stroke. Now light to heavy. And if you notice, these letters, these are so important to remember that each letter, you're drawing it. So don't think that my handwriting sucks, because that's what I always hear. I want you to just kind of like delete that, erase it, just get it out of your system, because your handwriting and your hand lettering are 2 different things. Because when you're doing hand lettering, you are drawing your letters. Okay, so this is not just plain print writing or plain cursive writing. You are now actually drawing your letters. And that is why it's important to remember to take everything 1 stroke at a time. See what we did with the letter A? We did an oval stroke, which is a very basic stroke that you need to practice also. Include that as part of your basic drills. And then we did a heavy to light. And then now with the letter U, what is that? An underturn stroke, right? Heavy to light. And then another thick stroke in here, like this. And then a much longer, bigger one. So take it as 1 stroke at a time. And then when you're connecting your strokes, they become letters. And then each letter, it's going to become a word. And then more words are going to become a quote, a paragraph, and so on and so on and so forth. So just take it 1 step at a time. So now we have the word autumn. What are we missing? Now we're missing the crossbar for a letter T. And this is where we're going to add a little bit of like style, because this is where we're going to add the word hello in prints. So we can do kind of like what we did with the letter A, or we can do the opposite, where we're going to swoop in down here and then up and down. So we can do that. We can add the word hello in there. Or I feel like this is what's much better here. Okay. So kind of like almost like making a small hill and then going up again. So think of it that way, instead of like, oh my gosh, flourishing, this is hard. But think of it as drawing. What am I drawing? It looks like a wave, part of the sea. When you were young, you were just drawing your ocean waves just like that. So it's just as simple as that. So don't try to make it super complicated, and relax. The more tense you are, the more you're like, oh God, I don't know how to do this. And so just breathe and relax and enjoy this process. And so I'm going to go up a little bit and then down and then bring it up over here. All right. So that's what we're going to do. So I have small space in here. So I'm going to time it where I go up a little bit here. And then when I reach the letter U, I'm going to go swoop down just a little bit and then bring it up like that. All right. So this time when you're doing this, you don't want to apply too much pressure or too little pressure. Think of it as in a happy middle. All right. So I'm going to go up. I'm going to bring down, and going up here, I'm just going to bring it up again like that. Just like that. And then here, this area right here, this is where we can add the word hello. My ink is overflowing in there. So the key is to take the other cap, because this is dual. On the other end, you have a 2.0 bullet tip. And this is what I'm going to use to add, to write the word hello. And I'm being mindful of the spacing, because if they have a very large area here that I want to fill in with the word hello, just kind of like that. So hello, autumn. All right. Okay, and so I'm going to go do that again in my main page right here. And I'm going to use a very light yellow glaze. Right, I want to make sure. Okay. I already know that I am so close to the right. And that's why it's important to try with your pencil first. I know I already have so much space in here. It's okay. And then of course, look at that. I'm so close to my letter M. Because I don't have my pencil. Where's my pencil? The good thing is that no one's going to know. We're going to have to just do it again. So I'll try it again. Those are here. I think what I did was I am writing so much bigger. I don't know why I do that. Lay, letter T. Letter U. Letter M. That's a lot of light to heavy because of all our letters in there. There we go. Okay. So now if you have the words in there, it's perfect. Now we're going to do a little bit of blending, or maybe a bit more than that, a bit more than little. I'm going to have my thing in there. Now, what I want to do is I want all the dark to be on top of my letters. So I have a green, or we could actually do a bit of a different type of blending today if you want. But I think what's going to look good is I'm going to use a beige red, okay? And then I'm going to use scarlet red. Look at the colors that I'm picking in here. And then I'm going to use a dark sepia color, or sepia. So we have a light coral. We have a red orange, and then we have a brown. So that's beige red 132. You have scarlet red 118. And then we have dark sepia 175. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my beige red first. And I think this one is dry. My first layer. So you want to give it a little bit of time. So I'm going to start with my beige red. I'm just going to apply everything the whole way around. It's almost like close to the bottom. And this part right here is where you can tune in your strokes. If you feel like you have areas where your thicker stroke is not as thick as you would like it to be, then you can add some thickness to your stroke to make it much thicker, you know, like this. I'm going to start adding here. that right there. And here. Now, if you want to use some watercolor, just the real basic watercolors, then you definitely want to do what I did. Use a waterproof marker. So you can have your first layer as your guide. Look at this. Now you don't have to worry about kind of like that thin and thick stroke for the blending, because I think that's the crucial part. If I have to do this one by one, each letter, then I have to worry about the thin and thick and all that. I think that's can easily get stressful. But since because we already have our first base in here, then it's much easier to kind of like follow along and adjust if you must, some of the areas that we have here. If you feel like the thick is not thick enough, then adjust if you must. All right. Have here. All right, now I'm going to start adding the Scarlet Red right here. So I have the first base. I'm going to read your comments while you guys are doing that. The frown is the easier. Yes, I think so too. I agree. Okay. Emma, that is okay. Yes, if you're using another brand. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, Jody, the different Pit Artist. This is a brand new one from Faber-Castell. This is called the Pit Artist Dual Pen Marker. It's super, super fun. I really love it because the other tip of the pen is actually a 0.8 tip. So that is super fun. So if you have like a smaller things, you can use this for like Bible journaling, bullet journaling, so you can use and write the much thinner 0.8 tip for those fine details or just plain writing. You can definitely use that one. All right. Yeah, Melody, I hope you were able to grab that worksheet. Um, Is there a reason for using a larger or a taller lowercase? No, it was just the style. It was just a personal preference. You can definitely use an uppercase letter A if that's, something that you are more used to. Oh my gosh, April. I don't think I can mention it here just because. But I got that someplace else and I love, love, love it. I don't know if it's still available, but I really love that one because I usually have a dirty bowl, a dirty water and then a cleaner water there when I'm doing some sort of lettering and watercoloring because it really does help. Okay, all right. So now we're going to apply my Scarlet Red in here. Now, what happens is that if you are using another brand of per se markers, your result might be totally different than mine. I say that because what happens is that some of the markers that you may be using are water-based dye inks, okay? So the water-based dye inks, they are not any marker, honestly. They're not created equal. So what happens is that some of them actually leave some stroke marks onto the paper, and some of them they stain. So some of them don't easily blend after a while. For example, I have applied the first layer, the second layer. Now I'm applying my third layer, right? With some other brands or some other markers, what's going to happen is that that color will stain and it's going to be much, much harder to blend it afterwards. So the key to that, if you will experience it, if you're already experiencing it right now, or if you've experienced it in the past, the key to it is to work one letter at a time instead of what we're doing layer after layer. With those type of markers that you're using, you might want to work one letter at a time. So for example, work on the A, work on applying the second layer and then a third layer, you know, then move on to the next letter so that you can avoid that stroke or that staining of the paper. But with the Albrecht Durer, because I've tested and tried this in the past and it's just fabulous. um, so I'm very confident enough that they bleed so, I mean, they don't bleed, but they blend so beautifully. Even after I have applied it a couple of minutes, and then wait for the second layer and then apply the second and the third, they still will blend so beautiful. Uh, okay, so I feel like I want to add the third color after I blend all of this together. Now that might be hard if your paper is going to be wet. So for the third step, we might need some very sleek surface. If you have an acrylic block, if you have a Ziploc, so anything that you can apply this or use an artist palette, or if you have an artist palette that you can use, you'll definitely need it. Just a plastic, honestly, any type of plastic material that you have, as long as it's sleek, you can use that. Now I'm going to start blending, and I want to zoom in just a little bit so we can really see the blending effects. All right, so I'm going to go close, switch this over here, and then move my paper up. I'm going to load my brush with water, and then I'm just going to start dropping the water in there and just start blending. Now, if you feel like they're not blending easy enough for you, you might need to add a little bit more water. Or remember what we talked about, the artist palette or that sleek surface that you have in there. You might want to go grab that and then add some of that color. Like this one is a Scarlet Red. You can use it and add color as you go, you know, if you feel like you need more color in there. So I'm just careful with the thin stroke. Uh, Also, it is very important that when you're working with watercolor or anything with the water media, I think it's very smart to have a paper towel close to you because, like what I said, sometimes the water, it's hard to control it. So you might end up with some puddles. So having a paper towel close by, then you can absorb some of that water like that quickly. Uh, I feel like I've added too much of that orange. That I am not seeing my beige red in here anymore. But what's happening is that your beige red and that scarlet red is actually blending together. So maybe it's not as intense as it's supposed to be. The color of that scarlet red's definitely changed because we have the pigments from the beige red that we applied earlier. So remember to take your time. Really take your time, especially if you're going to use a much smaller round brush, because those brushes can be a little tricky. So it takes some practice. And I think with this one, you want to really make sure that you're applying light pressure, light to medium pressure, I think, because I feel like you have better control instead of just kind of like going in there with like full on pressure, heavy pressure. Just think light. Sometimes it's much harder to manipulate that type of brush because it's so thin, it's so flexible. And so just be careful. Just like that. Going up. So I can really see the scarlet red and the beige red blending in here. Also notice how I'm not really blending everything that's on top. I'm focusing where the colors are meeting. So here the beige red and that scarlet red meets, and this is where I'm going to put my focus on and really blend the two colors in there to really have that beautiful gradient. And here as well, just going to bring that down and bring down the color. So you have all that darker shade on top, and then it gradually goes lighter as you go down, right? And I'm going to add a little bit more of my scarlet red in here, just like if I need it. So that's just a plain acrylic block I use for my stamps, and I'm using it as a different tool today. It's meant for something else, but I'm using it as a different tool. Go light. I'm going to focus here. When I'm doing any type of lettering, especially when I'm in this stage already of blending my colors, I get so lost in the moment. It's like I'm transcended to a different place. And I think it's the same for anything that I'm doing. If I'm doing doodling, I'm working on a project, painting, art, you just kind of like so in that moment. And I think that's the beauty of why we do what we do, is because for a moment we forget, everything. We forget about the laundry, we forget about bills, we forget about problems, we forget about being hungry. No, that doesn't happen to me. Every time I do this and it's so quiet, I can hear my stomach growling. You're like, all right, I'm hungry. But I think the really the lesson here is that enjoy the moment, and and don't get so, I don't know, don't get so caught up with the internet, because we see there's so many places where we can easily compare our work to somebody else, and that's normal. I think it's part of human nature. But I think what's really important to understand where you're at in your own journey, and to compare yourself to your own progress. That's the whole key. If I, just listen to myself, those many years that I am shamelessly comparing my progress to other artists, if I just listened to myself, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So I'm so glad that I didn't. And so I hope that you do the same, because again, it's very easy to just kind of like compare yourself to other people on the internet, especially with all the contents we consume every day. I mean, there's so much. Right. I'm just going to clean my acrylic block, and we're going to add a little bit of brown for that contrast. Again, in our worksheet, there's some sample leaves in there that you can use. So you can use that as an embellishment all around the word autumn and hello autumn. This time I just applied it in the acrylic block. I'm going to go drop a little bit of water in here so I can blend out. So pick up a little bit. I feel like this is much safer for me than adding the marker directly into the page. So this time I'm just going to add a little bit there and a little bit to the top. Again, I want this to be on the top part only. All right, just the top part. And when you feel like you have enough color in there, what you want to do this time around is clean your brush. Clean like that. And then whatever water is left in your brush, use that to blend out. So you don't have some harsh strokes in there. Then clean again, clean your brush, and then blend the line where you're connecting the two colors. Now you have a really great contrast in there with that brown. I'm going to do the same thing and just add it here. So that's why that paper towel is important, because if you feel like, all right, I have too much of that brown on my brush, or I have too much water, that you can always just kind of like use the paper towel to absorb some of that moisture that you do not want. Now, if you feel like you like that line where the two colors meet, then you don't feel like, then don't blend out too much. You know, again, it's personal preference. To me, what looks good maybe doesn't look good for you. And so kind of like always listen to your gut feeling. That's your superpower. Just gonna blend a little bit more. Yes, we're gonna do some kawaii doodling next week. And I actually have some upcoming classes I'm gonna have to upload tonight for our October. We have some spooky fun lessons also, and some beautiful gradients lettering, again using another product from Faber-Castell as well, of course. And we're going to play around with some gelatos. I know that some of you have been asking me for some gelatos classes. So I think some beautiful fall projects using some gelatos would be really, really fun. So we have that coming up. All right. Now, I know I cannot finish this on time, but I want to show you a little bit of sample of what you can do with your leaves. And this is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use the May green. Might be too green, but we're going to add some blending in here anyways. Now the way I do my leaves, I feel like always like cartoonish like, but it doesn't have to be. Of course, you know, you can play around and apply your own style as well. I'm just going to add some here so you guys can see how I would add it. So again, I use it as embellishment, which means I kind of add a little bit here and there. I want the focus to be the words hello autumn and not the leaves. The leaves are just embellishments. So you don't want it to be too big. You don't want it too small either, that, you know, your audience or whoever's looking at your art or yourself will not appreciate that. What is that? It looks like a blob. So you want to make sure that it's still, you can, you know, see it as leaves. All right. So I always start with the middle part of the leaves because this is what I use, and it guides as the direction of the leaves where it's going. If it's curved like this, then I know that my leaf is kind of like leaning, you know, kind of like a curve, you know. So if you want it diagonal, then you want to make it facing to the left, and you want to face it to the left. But again, this is me just kind of helping you through so you can really understand my thinking process of how I do things. I think it's important, you know, instead of just seeing it how it was done, I'm like, I wonder what she was thinking, why she was doing that. All right. Okay. So again, the middle part. So I want this to be like this. So I'm going to draw a curve, right? Oh, I don't have any more May green. Oh, sad. Okay. So, but the curve is like that. Okay. And then how I look at our leaves. We have different type of leaves in here. Okay. So I want to start with this with large at the bottom and then it goes small and then meat in the middle, right? So that's the style. So we have two longer ones and one short and then meat in the middle, right? So if you need to move your canvas around or your paper around so you can easily kind of like see things. Because if you're going to do this, keep it this way and you know that your leaf is facing towards this, you know, it might be harder to me. I'm I can see this much better. I have a better point of view here. So this is how I'm going to do it. So one large one, right? Smaller. And then I have a bump or a hump in the middle, right? And then I know I'm going to follow that shape. And then it's kind of like leaning there. That's my leaf. Now we can add color in there. Grab our brush and then blend it. And then later on, you can add some orange in here, you know, to really have that beautiful, rich autumn colors or the fall colors. So you can have a little bit of blending. Again, this is just your first layer. Or if you want to keep it as just one layer, by all means, just one layer. But if you want to add a little bit of blending, just like how we did it with our letters, that's just how we're going to do it. We're going to add another drop of color in there if you want. Get a bit of brown, you know, so we can have a little bit of that fall color. Maybe here while it was still wet, right? Just like that. But I appreciate you guys joining in today. I hope that this class was relaxing. I hope that it was filled with a lot of inspiration that you can try and practice at home. I hope it wasn't too complicated. I try not to do that because I want you to leave the class with a lot of inspiration than frustration because I understand that myself. So again, my name is Leigh Ralston. Again, brush lettering is something that it takes time. It's not overnight, but nothing is overnight, isn't it? So with a lot of practice and just dedication and a whole lot of fun. I think it's a beautiful journey, and I'm so proud and happy to be a part of your journey. And in behalf of Faber-Castell USA and Michael Stores, we appreciate you joining in and having fun with us tonight. Until next week, I hope to see you again, same time, Wednesday, 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. I'll see you. Stay creative and stay happy. Thank you, everybody.